it is always possible for people to talk, to fill in the time. Order. Selene Saxby to move the motion.
Thank you. I beg to move that this House has considered floating offshore wind, and it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Dame Angela. I would like to start by welcoming the work of the department at DESNZ, and particularly the new Secretary of State, in developing floating offshore wind, which I will refer to as FLOW for the rest of the debate, right here in the UK. And as I come on to it, it represents a huge opportunity for the UK as a whole, but especially for coastal communities such as my own in North Devon. I would particularly like to thank the new Secretary of State for her engagement following the results of the Contract for Difference allocation round AR5. Indeed, in her own maiden speech, she celebrated the role of her constituency in the pioneering renewable energy and celebrated that we are a world leader in offshore wind. Yesterday's announcement that the government has halved inflation since the start of the year was very welcome, as is the reduction of energy bills. As we all know, the price jump was caused by Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, but it demonstrated just why we need to accelerate the development of sustainable British energy generation. We live on a very windy, very tidal, and even sometimes sunny island, and my North Devon constituency is particularly blessed with all three. If we can increase the amount of energy we generate from these renewable sources, then British households will be better insulated from global energy price shocks and be able to rely on secure, clean energy. We have already seen the potential that onshore wind and fixed offshore wind has, and it is fantastic to see it generating more and more of our energy mix. FLOW can take this potential even further. A common criticism of our continued development of wind turbines is that they only work when the wind blows the right way. Traditionally, our offshore wind farms are situated off our northeast coastline, where the waters are shallower and current less temperamental, conditions which work for fixed offshore wind. However, in the Celtic Sea, the wind blows the other way round, and the Atlantic Array was unable to go ahead because of these deeper waters and the strong currents coming in off the Atlantic. FLOW will open up areas like the Celtic Sea, so we can generate energy no matter which way the wind blows. As it can be deployed in waters deeper than 60 metres, this technology opens up 80% of our offshore wind resource. FLOW is set to make up to 5 gigawatt of our energy generation by 2030 and 50 gigawatt by 2050. FLOW has the potential to bring 29,000 jobs and 43.5 billion in gross value added to the UK by 2050. But we need to ensure we are ahead of the curve and not just deploy this technology for energy generation, but harness its full potential by developing the manufacturing element as well. The lack of bids in AR5 was incredibly disappointing for developers across the industry. To miss out on a year of development has increased uncertainty in the market at a time when both the EU and the United States are offering more support to develop FLOW. It also put at risk £20 billion of short-term investment into the UK, which will be crucial for developing not just FLOW itself, but the associated manufacturing and supply chain. But we are currently a global leader. Of the 200 megawatt of FLOW deployed worldwide, 70 megawatt can be found here in the UK. However, to maintain our position, we need to provide developers with certainty and get this technology off the ground and out to sea. There is concern that in AR5, FLOW was treated the same as fixed offshore wind. But when fixed offshore wind was at a similar point in its development, it had access to final investment decision enabling for renewables, known as FIDA, and renewables obligation certificates, ROC. FIDA and ROC both provided revenue and business case certainty, reduced competition, and created the conditions for much-needed investment. And we are now reaping those benefits. Fixed-bottom wind farms were able to trial different cutting-edge technologies and take higher risks, where they could accurately model best and worst-case scenarios. FLOW is currently in a similar situation. Pre-commercial projects in the UK need to be able to trial different approaches. FLOW will reach price parity with fixed, but with this new complex technology, it cannot be all about price at this stage in its development journey. As one industry expert observed at our last meeting of the APPG for the Celtic Sea, we have to stop obsessing about cost reduction for a technology that hasn't yet been deployed at scale. that if we support it to get it going like we did for fixed wind, costs will fall. Cost reduction occurs by deployment of technology, not the passing of time. The administrative strike price offered today for AR6, alongside the announcement that offshore wind will get its own pot, provides the government with the potential to unlock a record level of investment in flow. To ensure we achieve this potential, I would ask that the budget for offshore wind in AR6 is large enough that it is not consumed by one project, so we can see as many eligible projects as possible get afloat. This is counterbalanced by the need to ensure that the budget announced next March is not set so tightly that it forces violent competition during this fledgling stage of flow's development. Today's IR6 announcement is warmly welcomed by the industry and means we still have the opportunity to hit 5 gigawatt by 2030, safeguard those stepping stone projects and cementing our position as a global leader. It is also crucial to rebuilding confidence in the existing flow development pipeline. Now that we have the administrative strike price, I would welcome the bringing forward of AR6 for flow technology so that we can keep pressing to get flow afloat and minimise the delays caused by AR5. Developing flow turbines and substructures is a considerable engineering endeavour, as substructures alone can be up to 80 metres across and weigh thousands of tonnes, with turbine heights expected to reach as high as 300 metres or as tall as the Shard. Therefore, the manufacture and assembly of components will need significant port requirements if the UK is to seize the first mover advantage. The £160 million floating offshore wind manufacturing investment scheme, known as FlowMIS, that opened for bids this spring is welcomed, and the industry looks forward to seeing a fair share coming to key Celtic Sea ports. However, funding decisions should be made on FlowMIS as quickly as possible to allow our ports and supply chain to gear up for this huge opportunity, but also with a strategic overview to ensure ports work collaboratively to optimise supply chain expertise. Developers also need certainty, with leasing rounds to secure the sites they need in order to develop a full business case and make applications for future allocation round auctions. The recent update from the Crown Estate on the steps it is taking to increase transparency through the auction process was welcomed. However, there remains uncertainty on the timelines for the leasing round, and it now appears leases will not be awarded until later in 2024. At this stage of technology development, it is essential that innovation projects start their journey now if they are to succeed and help grow a flourishing UK supply chain. Initial opportunities need to be maximised to develop the capabilities to secure the economic benefits of the subsequent large-scale flow projects so that we can maximise exports to the growing global market in the future. The Welsh Affairs Select Committee, chaired by the Right Honourable Member for Pembroke and Preseli, who could not join us today, but has done a huge amount of work to support flow and the projects potentially coming on shore in South Wales, where community engagement has ensured they are now hopefully ready to bid straight into AR6 and proceed. The committee has recently released a report on floating offshore in Wales, which has been added to the debate on this order paper, and I'm glad to see a recommendation in it for the department to work with the Crown Estate to provide visibility beyond the current leasing round and to bring out a strategy as to how this will be delivered. And whilst I welcome the government's response to the report that the Powering Up Britain Energy Security Plan already sets out the steps that the government is taking, it would be good to see a more strategic lead on the development of flow, especially in the Celtic Sea, where it is a brand new technology. We need to look at the development of flow strategically, particularly in the Celtic Sea, and not at a national level. We must work on the main prize, which is the gigawatt arrays, and get these demonstrators that are ready to proceed afloat. Far too much time and energy is being spent in my own constituency with the distraction of the 7 turbines of White Cross. The time it takes to get these projects afloat means that early decisions are out of date by the time they get to crucial decisions. Indeed, the controversial White Cross project, due to come ashore in my North Devon constituency, may have only been able to secure a plug-in point at Yelland when it applied back in 2021, but National Grid seem to think now it would be possible to connect to Alverdiscot, where the majority of the other projects that come into England will be plugging in. However, my suggestion that this hugely unpopular project at Whitecross, which has now attracted over 500 objections from across North Devon, including from our biosphere, Natural England and the energy expert, is never going to get through planning. Community consultation and engagement is vital for these projects to succeed. This project is being bulldozed through my community, taking up vital local authority planning time, when planning is the #1 reason development of all types is delayed in North Devon. Natural England, in their objection to the development, said that the project still have fundamental concerns in relation to the application as currently submitted. They also ask that this application is put on hold until further information and evidence is provided. I hope that someone can look more strategically at the Celtic Sea and incorporate Whitecross into the main projects and consider the whole Celtic Sea project as one national infrastructure project, rather than subject small planning authorities to this amount of additional work. Indeed, we should learn from what happened down the East Coast and secure one cable corridor in the Celtic Sea, probably a split into Pembroke and Elverdiscot, but we don't need one into Yelland as well, in my personal opinion. As well as recognising that areas that rely on their tourism business are potentially less receptive to cables landing in beach car parks and reducing income for multiple businesses in the area. I do hope that the Minister can bring whatever powers his department has to bear to ensure that Whitecross, if it goes ahead, delivers proper community benefits and fully recompenses the community for the inevitable damage to our core current industry and shows more respect to the community of North Devon that I represent than its current engagement programme has to date. I set up the Celtic Sea All-Party Parliamentary Group to bring a strategic overview to the development of flow. This is not only about the process of getting the turbines afloat, which is obviously the current priority, but looking further down the line to the supply chain, where cabling will land, the use of our marine areas, environmental concerns, and indeed the operation and maintenance once these turbines are afloat, and how we actually service what should be an enormous industry in our region. As has been seen with the proposed Whitecross development in my constituency, many people who are otherwise supportive of the development of flow are concerned when it has an outsized and unnecessary impact on the local environment and businesses. So it is crucial as we move forward that cabling routes are planned for the 250 turbines to minimise the disruption of blue carbon locked into the seabed, and we really need to continue to focus on that long-term objective of getting those 250 turbines afloat. Similarly, consideration needs to be made for local industries such as fishing and the effect that turbines will have on marine wildlife such as seabirds. It is certainly not a case of supporting one of these things over the other, but by considering the development as a whole, we can minimise the impact these turbines and associated activities will have and ensure we can develop clean, green energy with community support. As I've laid out, flow will be key to our secure and sustainable energy future. Whilst I welcome today's AR6 administrative strike price, I would reiterate my ask that the AR6 round for flow specifically, if at all possible, can be brought forward. There is a concern that even this one-year delay may cause a far greater delay to these projects due to international supply chain pressures. We cannot lose our first mover advantage and watch development of this exciting technology float overseas. I'm also asking the government to consider the Celtic Sea development as a national infrastructure project so that we can consider it as a whole and bring the benefits to all of our communities in the South West and Wales as swiftly as possible. Clear long-term plans are the best thing for the industry and the other industries who rely on our beautiful coastal areas.
The question is that this House has considered floating offshore wind. Call Dame Nia Griffiths.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Dame Angela. And first of all, I would like to congratulate the Honourable Member for North Devon, for not only for having this debate today, but for all the work that she has done to raise the issue of offshore wind and floating offshore wind. I think it was
British people and the unique geography of our island to be realised, and I'd very much appreciate hearing from the Minister as to how he is going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Call Minister Andrew Bowie.
Thank you very much, Dame Angela, and it's a pleasure to serve under you in the chair this afternoon. And I have to say, after quite an exciting political week, it's a pleasure to end with such a, on the whole, agreeable, positive debate here in Westminster Hall. I think all of us agree about the potential of floating offshore wind and indeed the huge contribution that it brings to the United Kingdom, its economy, and its contribution towards our drive towards net zero and our energy security and independence. And so, on that, I would like to congratulate my honourable friend, she is a friend, the member for North Devon, in securing this important debate today. She has been a vocal champion of floating offshore wind at all levels, from her constituency through to the wider Celtic Sea region in her role as chair of the all-party parliamentary group for the Celtic Sea, and she rightly highlights the benefits that this new technology could bring to the United Kingdom as a whole. The United Kingdom, far be it from me to disagree with the Shadow Minister, is actually one of the world leaders in floating offshore wind. The world's first floating offshore wind farm was built here in UK waters, and since then we have built a strong base of new projects and development to grow our industry still further. Indeed, the oil and gas industry, already referenced by the Honourable Member for Aberdeen North, my constituency neighbour surrounding mine and her constituency, has its own opportunities floating wind to play a crucial role in decarbonising North Sea production by being able to access deeper waters and provide electricity to those platforms. Our 80 megawatts of current installed floating wind capacity builds on our world-leading status in fixed-bottom offshore wind deployment. Not that you would know it listening to the Labour Party. We have over 14 gigawatts of installed capacity, the most in Europe. We have the first, second, third, fourth and fifth largest offshore wind farms in the world generating power right now, and contrary to the Labour Party's castigation of this government's record, we have gone from only 7% of renewable electricity on the grid in 2010 when they left office to 48% in Q1 of last year, and we have decarbonised faster than any other G7 nation at the same time as growing the economy. The opportunity for floating offshore wind is significant. The Global Wind Energy Council have said the market is nascent but could be huge. 80% of the world's offshore wind resource potential lies in waters deeper than 60 metres. That is too deep for fixed bottom wind. And the UK's Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult's Floating Offshore Wind Centre of Excellence has estimated that floating offshore wind has the potential to deliver £43.6 billion in UK gross value added by 2050, creating more than 29,000 jobs in the process. Now, our 5 gigawatt ambition recognises this, and the potential of floating wind has to play a key role in our energy mix as we move steadily towards net zero. We are committed to building on the UK's position and placing the UK at the forefront of the development of this exciting new sector. But we know 5 gigawatts is a stretching ambition, and we are working hard to create the right environment for investment and address barriers to deployment. Firstly, we recognise the crucial importance raised today by every member who contributed of port infrastructure to floating offshore wind, which is why we launched the £160 million Floating Offshore Wind Manufacturing Investment Scheme, or FLOMIS for short. This funding will help leverage vital investment needed in port infrastructure to deploy floating offshore wind at large scale. FLOMIS closed for applications on the 27th of August, and I can reassure members we are currently assessing all the bids that we received. Secondly, we recognise the importance of the right support mechanisms through the world-leading and envied Contracts for Difference scheme. The CFD scheme is looked to worldwide as the model for how to support renewables deployment, and the CFD auctions have so far awarded contracts totalling over 30 gigawatts of new renewable capacity across all technologies, including around 20 gigawatts of offshore wind. Last year's allocation round, AR5, was a success story for many technologies, including marine energy and the first 3 geothermal projects. But we do recognise the shortfall in fixed bottom and floating offshore wind. And I acknowledge the concerns my honourable friend and indeed others have made at the time and indeed here this afternoon. We reflected carefully on the results of AR5, and I trust that today's announcement detailing the parameters for next year's allocation round, AR6, demonstrates that we have listened and responded to the concerns raised. The administered strike price for floating offshore wind has increased from £116 to £176 per megawatt hour, an increase of 52% from AR5 in real terms, recognising the unprecedented upwards pressure on project cost, which is affecting the industry worldwide, as we have seen. We hope that today's announcement will bring forward viable floating wind projects as we look to investment in the industry. Thirdly, We recognise the importance of a long-term pipeline of projects to give investors the confidence that they need to take long-term decisions. The UK has the largest floating wind pipeline in the world, based on confirmed seabed exclusivity, with around 25 gigawatts already agreed, including through the Scotland leasing round referenced today and the INTOG process. I would be delighted to give way.
I thank my honourable friend, and I just wondered if we could clarify within the AR6 announcement for today. We all know in AR5 that there were 2 projects that were ready to bid, and at this point in time, there are 2 projects ready to bid. Is there any opportunity, now that we have a strike price that seems to be acceptable to all concerned, for us to actually accelerate that decision for those 2 projects and effectively then have an AR7 for all of those projects that are in the next pipeline so that we can get these ones afloat?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Dame Angela. I understand very much why my honourable friend wants that to be the case. But we have to recognise that one of the reasons for the success of renewables, including this country, has been the predictable auctions that we have had. And developers are already planning for AR6 in March next year. Bringing this forward any further could jeopardise the round, not amplify it. So we are reluctant to bring forward the round. However, I hope that the confidence that the industry will receive from the announcement today will mean that AR6 will be a huge success. We all need it to be, and that's why we've taken the decision that we have today. As I said, we recognise the importance of a long-term pipeline of projects to give investors the confidence that they need to take long-term decisions. And with the exclusivity and through the Scotland and INTOG processes, we have already seen this successful. As my friend, the Honourable Member for North Devon will know, the Crown Estate are also moving forward with their plans to launch Leasing Round 5, making available areas of seabed capable of supporting up to 4.5 gigawatts of capacity in the North Sea. The Government fully supports the Crown Estate's plans, which represent the first opportunity for commercial-scale floating offshore wind projects in the region. And we also recognise the importance of a long-term pipeline in the Celtic Sea beyond Leasing Round 5. We will continue to work closely with the Crown Estate on this, and we seek to realise this full potential and the opportunities represented by floating offshore wind in the Celtic Sea. The Crown Estate are due to make further announcements on their plans in the Celtic Sea before the end of the year. We also recognise the importance of dialogue between industry and government to drive progress. The Floating Offshore Wind Task Force is co-chaired between industry and government, and their first report in March this year, their Industry Roadmap 2040, has been highly informative in shaping our understanding of the specific demands on port infrastructure that they need to support floating wind at scale. The task force is currently working on a vision to 2050, due for publication in Q2 next year, which will set out the potential prize for the UK that floating offshore wind could offer. We will continue to work closely with industry through the Renewable UK and the Offshore Wind Industry Council to assess supply chain needs and opportunities for the UK and develop an industrial growth plan, an IGP, to support the growth of sustainable supply chains. And I have to say, yes.
Just on that specific issue, as I said, ScotWind encouraged the conversation between developers and the supply chain. Is his government doing everything that they can to ensure that those who are actually, bidding and winning the bids are working with the supply chain to get them upskilled as quickly as possible and to ensure that they can make the investments and the confidence that they will be able to create these widgets for offshore wind farms?
Mr. Bowie.
Widgets being one of the specialties of our region, yes, look, there's always more that we could do, and there absolutely we should be seeking to push the boundaries and work as closely as possible in lockstep with the industry to ensure that the supply chain in the UK grows, creating the jobs of the future, ensuring that the pieces, the widgets, and everything else that are required to develop a successful floating offshore wind industry are created here in the UK, bringing benefit to communities up and down this country. We do think that the Floating Offshore Wind Task Force is an important step in that, it's an important part of the process, and we have our industry roadmap now as well. So we are working closely with industry to deliver that, but of course there's more that we can do and we will do, and of course government is open to any suggestions of how we actually better improve that relationship to ensure we get to the place that we need to go. And I was actually about to turn to the Honourable Lady's comments regarding skills. This is very rare. I agreed with, well, not very rare, but it's quite rare that I agreed with every single thing that the Honourable Lady for Aberdeen North said. Creating a workforce for the future for all of the energy projects that we are embarking on right now is a personal passion of mine. We need to get young people engaging in STEM subjects at school. We need to grow the capacity of our further and higher education institutions to deliver the courses that are available and create the apprenticeships with industry to get people into this growing energy industry that we have in this country. And we need to ensure that the right processes are in place so that those people who want to transfer, who want to upskill, reskill from existing technologies and industries across into the new and emerging technologies and industries are able to do that. The passporting issue that she raised is incredibly important on that journey. And I, from my perspective as the nuclear minister, I'm very keen and delighted to have set up the Nuclear Skills Task Force between ourselves and the Ministry of Defence to see what we can do to grow that workforce. And I know that work like that is going on in the renewables sphere as well, and I am very keen to see what we can do to work with the existing oil and gas industry as an example to see what we can do to transfer those skills and to make that transfer of skills much easier. The government today published, we understand that cost is a challenge for a nascent sector like floating wind. We are supporting the sector with £31 million of funding, matched by £30 million from industry through the Floating Offshore Wind Demonstration Programme to explore innovations to help reduce the cost of deploying floating offshore wind technology. The Floating Offshore Wind Task Force, as part of their 2050 vision, are also looking to identify specifically what the key enablers of cost reduction are and recommend specific actions to address them. And finally, it would be remiss of me in my role as the Networks Minister not to mention the grid and network and connections, because it's been raised rightly by all the members here today, and not a day goes past when there isn't another connection issue brought to my desk in the department. We know that this is a barrier, a significant barrier to the deployment of many renewables projects and a challenge for our energy infrastructure more widely. And in July 2022, the government appointed Nick Windsor to the role of Electricity Networks Commissioner to advise the government on how to reduce the timeline for transmission network delivery by half. The Commissioner's final recommendations were submitted to the government and published on the 4th of August. We welcome the Commissioner's report and are committed to the direction of its recommendations, and we have committed to publishing our response and action plan imminently in response to the Commissioner's recommendations. The member from North Devon knows, however, that community engagement, respect, and thought-through and sympathetic planning of these onshore infrastructure is something I myself take a keen interest in. Decarbonisation of the grid, increasing capacity is important for all the reasons that I've just suggested. In fact, it's vital. But it must be done with respect, sympathy and understanding of local communities and businesses, and be willing to change, adapt and be flexible in those plans. Now, she knows that with the role of ministers in the planning system in England and Wales, I cannot comment on specific projects, including the Whitecross Farm project that she referenced. But I know that the developers will have heard her loud and clear today and at other times. And a response on community benefits, which she asked of, is also being published imminently. Can I congratulate my honourable friend, the member for North Devon, for securing this timely and important debate? I trust... Oh, yeah, yes, I can, yes.
I'm sorry, I mentioned the issue about communication from the grid and the fact that the communication is not always up to scratch. Will he ensure that he does what he can to put pressure on that so that, you know, I know he's working on the speed, but also so that the communication is improved so that developers know what is happening, when it is happening, and even just when they'll hear an answer?
Minister Bowie.
Absolutely, I can give her that assurance. I am working hard on that. I hope I've demonstrated today that the government not only understands the challenges being faced by this exciting new sector, but is taking concrete action to address them. The opportunity is there for the UK to firmly establish itself as a world leader in floating offshore wind, and we are determined to see this vision and this opportunity realised. Thank you.
So let's expect to wind up.
Thank you, Dame Angela, and thank you to all honourable members for taking part in this afternoon's debate. Particular thanks to the Minister and his entire team for their ongoing engagement. Ahead of AR5, I raised the matter of the strike price 22 times in the chamber. and I think everyone is well aware of my views on AR5. I very much hope we can rectify it as we move into AR6, and I very much hope that my own community of North Devon's voice will be heard, because some of the issues that we are dealing with locally are going to be replicated around the coast, and we do need to get these things right for communities to actually welcome, as they have done up until this point, developments like this. And I think we also need to recognise that some of the issues within AR6, yes, you can forecast where it is, But this particular development, the reason that their planning is so rushed is so they can bid in AR6, because if they can't bid in AR6, they may not bid at all. So that makes you wonder, why are they bidding anyway if they're not in it for the long term, but that we are also creating some unintended consequences of the processes that we are putting in place. So I hope, I heard the Minister, but I very much hope, I asked 22 times last time, I'll ask a couple more times this, that we might be able to reconsider the speed at which we deliver AR6 for floating offshore wind.
The question